Hi, I'm Dr. Gwyn Erwin, and welcome back to my channel, Healing for Your Life. Today we're going to be talking about the fifth keystone in my developmental model of healthy development. This one is on attachment. And attachment is an enormous topic in the psychological world. There are whole conferences given on it. There are classes given on it. I consider it a significant keystone in my model of 7 keystones of healthy development, but it is in equal weight actually with the other ones, but it's not often thought of that way. It's often given primary weight. Part of the reason for that, besides the fascination of the topic, is that the research that has been done in the field of attachment is some of the most prolific and reliable psychological research we have ever had. The research instruments and models and tests have been given thousands and thousands and thousands of times with predictable, reliable results. That's very rare. And so one of the reasons that people focus on it is because there is so much rich research. I'm going to begin today with giving you 2 capsule versions of the 2 main research models that are used in studying attachment, just so you have a sense of familiarity, because it will help you understand the results that came from them much more thoroughly. Back in the 1950s, there was a woman by the name of Mary Ainsworth, and she worked and collaborated with John Bowlby, who was originally part of Freud's inner circle and was kind of booted out because he became very interested in attachment and other things, and that became somewhat competitive for Freud. And so his interest, John Bowlby's interest, didn't remain Freud. It became his own work, and he was very interested in attachment and what he would ultimately do phenomenal work in this field about infants and children. So the foundation of attachment theory is this, that we are attachment-seeking beings, that the drive in our lives is not for pleasure or for destruction or for sexuality or any number of other things. It is to belong, for proximity seeking to those that we love and who we want to love us. And so this was the heart of John Bowlby's work. And in the 1950s, Mary Ainsworth, who was doing her own research, became very interested in John Bowlby's work and began collaborating with him, and came up with this research instrument called the strange situation. In this research process, what happens is that they use a mother, usually a mother, primarily a mother, it could be a father, but mainly it's been a mother, and a young child, ages 9 to about 18 months of age. And they are playing together in a room, and the researcher comes into the room, and after a few minutes the mother leaves. And the researcher pays attention to how the baby responds to the mother leaving. And the mother isn't gone very long, half an hour at the most. And the researcher is involved with the baby during this time and paying attention to how the baby responds. And then the mother returns, and that's called the reunion phase. So we have separation and reunion. And now the researcher is paying attention to how the baby behaves when the mother returns. That's, in essence, the strange situation. A lot more details to it, but that's all we need to know for today. So that's the strange situation. Out of that research, researchers were able to identify two major categories of attachment, secure versus insecure, based on that research. So this is what secure attachment looks like. When the mother and baby are playing, they're very engaged. When the researcher comes in, the baby takes note of that, but continues playing with the mother, but doesn't exhibit particularly any fear. And then when the mother leaves, the baby may in fact be distressed, but very soon is able to engage with the researcher and play with the researcher and return to play and return to engagement. And then when the mother returns, the baby is able to re-engage with the mother and have both involved. And the baby, any distress that the baby has had is comforted and ameliorated. That's what secure attachment looks like. It does not mean that when the mother leaves, the baby doesn't get distressed. Baby may get distressed, but is easily soothed and comforted, is able to re-engage with life, and then is able with ease and pleasure to re-engage with mommy when she returns. That's what secure attachment looks like. Now then they were able to identify 3 forms of insecure attachment. One of those is called ambivalent or resistant attachment, but it's mainly known as ambivalent attachment. And what we see with this is that the baby is playing with the mother. The researcher comes in, and that might make the baby a little fretful and might make the baby a little clingy with the mother. And then when the mother leaves, the baby is distressed, tries to engage but unsuccessfully with the researcher, tries to play but continues to be fretful and distressed. And then when the mother returns, gets very clingy with the mother, but isn't really comforted by the mother's return, and gets very clingy and dependent and needy, but is not able to have its comforted needs met successfully, not because the mother isn't trying, but because the baby is ambivalently attached. That's what ambivalent attachment looks like. In avoidant attachment, the baby is in the room with the mother, and maybe playing, but kind of playing in its own world. It's not really engaging with the mother. And so when the researcher comes in, the child may or may not recognize the arrival of somebody else, but doesn't engage and continues to do their own play. When the mother leaves, the baby really pays no attention and is not distressed and does not engage with the researcher in play, but continues its own play in a very solitary way. And then when the mother returns, the baby does not engage with the mother and just continues its own play, and in fact may kind of shun the mother a little bit, turn away and play over here. That's what avoidant attachment looks like. Disorganized attachment takes place where there is no proximity seeking at all. And whereas ambivalent, we have extreme proximity seeking that isn't satisfied. In avoidant, we have minimized proximity seeking. In disorganized attachment, where there's been trauma involved, there is no proximity seeking. There is just distress. So when the parent and the child are in the room, the child is very obviously distressed, might try to play, not able to play, not really be able to become engaged. When the researcher comes in, they get more distressed, they're not able to engage with that researcher, they may be afraid of them. When the parent leaves, The child may flap its arms, fall on the floor, wail, cry, but is not able to be soothed. And when the parent returns, the child may exhibit the same behaviors and is very disoriented and disorganized. That's called disorganized attachment. And that occurs when there's been a lot of trauma. We know from other research that when there is parental abuse in the first year of life, 80% of those babies form a disorganized attachment system, not just to that parent, but to everyone that comes in contact with them. So it's a very extreme situation, but it unfortunately exists in a great number of cases. So now we're going to flash forward a number of years, and another researcher by the name of Mary Main, who knew of Mary Ainsworth's work and was a student of hers, I believe, was now at the university teaching, and she, along with her students, Mary Main, along with her students, said, I wonder if there's a way to predict attachment patterns or attachment systems in adults, of what kind of attachment systems their children are going to have even before they have them. And again, this research model has been repeated over and over and over with completely reliable, predictable results. And using it, which is called the Adult Attachment Interview, a researcher, after conducting this interview and doing all the work involved in that bit of research, is able to predict with 100% accuracy the kind of attachment their person that they're studying has already formed with their children or will form with their children, unless there is an intervention made of some kind, which of course is the purpose, so that we can change attachment systems before they ever take place. So what they do in this instrument is that they conduct a lengthy interview, and it's called the Adult Attachment Interview. And it is a narrative assessment of the adult. Now, it could be a teenager who is maybe a young, about-to-be parent, but a teenager or an adult's attachment experiences in their own lives and their state of mind with respect to attachment relationships. And this interview is lengthy, and it takes into account what are called Grice's maxims. And I'm not going to detail all of those right now, but they're things like quality of the narrative, quantity of the narrative, coherence of the narrative, things like that. So it blends, the adult attachment narrative takes those into account. So what they found in this research instrument was that a secure adult who is securely attached is going to create secure attachments with their children, which makes sense, right? A secure adult is someone whose narrative has a rich quality to it. It is not excessive, and it isn't limited, and there is a coherence to it. There's a storyline to it, and most importantly, there is an emotional coherence so that when they talk about their important relationships or their attachment relationships from early in their life or currently in their life, they naturally display appropriate emotional responses. For instance, if they're talking about the death of a parent, they may tear up. They may express, or they will express, the sadness that goes with that. If they're angry at somebody, they're able to express that anger. If they feel loved and cherished, they're able to discuss that with the appropriate emotional balance that goes with that. And so what the researchers are looking for in that adult attachment interview is somebody who can narrate their emotional attachment relationships in a way that shows a full and rich display of emotions as they tell the story of those relationships. Now, the preoccupied adult creates ambivalent attachment. And what they see with a preoccupied adult is that their narrative has a lot of tangents to it and a lot of kind of going off on trails and then kind of forgetting where they were, or they stop one story and begin another, or they have a very melancholy affect, or they interrupt themselves and suddenly start thinking about something else. And their emotional balance in narrating their attachment system is often kind of overflowing with details and very limited at the same time in details because they go off on these tangents. So the quality is not necessarily very rich. The quantity is compromised. It's either too much or too little. And the coherence is not fully there. And the emotional expression about that narrative is compromised. The dismissive parent is the one who creates an avoidant attachment. And what we see in these adult attachment interviews with a dismissive adult or parent-to-be is somebody who minimizes and belittles attachment relationships at all. They're a person who will say, well, you know, I really much pretty raised myself and I did a good job and I don't really need people. Or they'll talk about a historical figure in their past and say, yeah, that person was no good, and just kind of move on. And so they're very, very dismissive of the importance of relationships, the meaning of relationships, and the influence of relationships. They're very much solo travelers who discount the emotional connection with others. And so the quality is going to be very kind of cynical and belittling. The quantity is going to be very, very minimal. The coherence is going to be very choppy and kind of brushing things off. And there won't be any real emotional balance to the narrative other than kind of getting rid of all those relationships. Lastly, the unresolved disorganized adult is one who is going to create a disorganized attachment with their children. And this unresolved disorganized adult is sort of a terrible mix of ambivalent, avoidant, and disorganized. And the quality of the narrative is completely compromised. They're really not able to talk in any coherent way about their important relationships. They may have been very severely abused in their lives. They may be very angry. There may be a lot of quantity in what they talk about, but it's hard to kind of add up. It's kind of chaotic and a piece here and a piece there. And their emotions are all over the place, and they're very difficult to keep on topic and very difficult to soothe. So this is sort of the framework of attachment theory. And our attachment experiences are one of the vital keystones of our development. And as we will see in the accompanying videos on what happens with trauma to our attachment and how it affects our whole system, of relationships and how we relate to others throughout our lives, and then what to do about that will be in future videos. So thank you for being with me. I look forward to seeing you again. Bye for now.